All right, here we are. So with that, I'd like to officially call the September 9th Academic Senate meeting to order. The time is now 3:03 p.m. I am going to bring up our agenda on board docs and share it with you all. We have our Zoom meeting guidelines there, so just a very brief review of all of those, especially because we have substitutes and new senators today. Please, the way we interact in the meeting is by raising your virtual hand. That's your Zoom hand in the participants field. What's really nice is Zoom keeps track of the order of participants, so I can call on people in the order that they raise their hand. You are allowed to mute and unmute yourself. I ask that everybody mute themselves during the meeting when they're not speaking to reduce background noise and so that folks can concentrate on the conversation at hand. Also, additionally, the chat function must be turned off. I've done that at this time. We are a Brown Act committee, so we can't have conversations happening that aren't public, so that's why the chat function is turned off. So if you need to mention something, please, again, raise your virtual hand to do so. Other than that, I want to mention for any guests that are here, it is a policy of the Academic Senate not to have non-senators contribute to the meeting unless it's during public comment or you are an invited speaker or guest to answer questions as a resource. So with that, I'd like somebody to volunteer to read our land acknowledgement. Michelle, is your hand up to do so?
It is.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
Okay, here we go. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place the land that Santa Barbara City College sits upon, their home. We are honored to be guests upon this land and are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding.
Thank you so much for that. Okay. Next, I will call for the approval of our agenda. We don't need to be taking any items out of order today, so we will go through our agenda as listed. I need a motion for that, right, Patricia? Patricia Stark, are you out there? Michelle? Can people hear me? Yes, okay.
I motion that we accept the agenda as written.
Okay, there you go. Robin?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Unmute yourself and say aye.
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 Thank you for that.
Aye.
At this time, any noes? No? Any abstentions? Coolness, moving right along. We are now at item 3.1, public comment. At this time, I have not received any requests for public comment ahead of time, but I will also now ask the participants of the meeting if anybody would like to provide a public comment at this time. If you would like so, please indicate so by raising your participant hand in the Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So at this time, we will move on from public comment. And we do have some Senate membership changes. Apparently the fine arts election is still proceeding. So we have a substitute for the fine arts division for this week only, Pamela Shaw. Pamela, thanks for joining us this week. And I am very excited to announce, I know it was announced yesterday by Patricia via faculty email, that our newly elected part-time credit senator will be Ana Garcia, and she's here with us. So let's give it up to her. So she is officially seated as a Senate member at this time. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to Senate business. Item 5.1, at this time, you have all received via the publishing of the agenda our academic Senate minutes for our July 15th meeting. I know it feels like eons ago, and in some ways it was, but the minutes are there. So I'll call now for any corrections to those minutes. Robin, I'm seeing your hand raised. Is there something you'd like to add?
Yeah, just two tiny things, but in section 5.3, the EVP's president's report, third paragraph, it says blanked waivers instead of blanket waivers.
Okay.
And item 5.4, request to agendize items at future meetings. In the last paragraph, my name is misspelled,
Okay.
which I normally wouldn't say anything about, but it's Guno.
Christina, did you catch those from Robin?
I did. Thank you, Robin. Sorry about that.
No worries at all. Thank you.
No, totally fine, Christina. Thanks. Okay. So at this time, are there further corrections to our minutes from July 15th? I'm not seeing any hand raise. So,
Well, actually, sorry, just in the minutes, it said, oh shoot, what section is it? We're talking about the CAC. So I was just looking at it. It's 6.3, I think, and it said that I would like to add credit representation to CAC, but we already have it. So I guess it wasn't I don't know if that can be removed or point out that there is, I guess, we would add.
right.
It's implying we have it, we do have it. I mean, we do it.
Right. I think at the time, though, you were questioning it, and we
Yes.
have since figured out that you do have it. Just at the time, I think that's why it's in there like that. if
Okay.
my memory serves me. Right. So we'll get that edited as well. Thanks. Any further corrections? Okay. If there are no further corrections, the meeting minutes for the July 15th meeting are approved as distributed and corrected. So we'll make sure that we get those corrected. All right, so moving on to item 5.2. There are 6 separate meeting minutes, and these are for our mini retreat items on the 6 different times that we met. So I will call again. Are there any, these meeting minutes have been distributed to you. Are there any corrections at this time? Robin?
Sorry, I just didn't take my hand down from
Oh.
before.
She didn't take her hand down. Okay. Any corrections for the 6 separate meeting minutes for our mini retreat items from the summer work? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time for that. So if there are no corrections, the minutes for our 6 mini retreats are approved as distributed and posted on our agenda. With that, I'd like to move right along to item 6.1, my president's report. I'm going to waive giving an oral report at this time. I made a lot of details and gave a lot of information about the different meetings that I have been attending and the different work that I've been doing as the Academic Senate President. So that is all supplied there for your review and consideration. Should you have any questions about anything, please let me know and follow up. Item 6.2, liaison reports. Let me pull up our liaison reports, and I'll ask each of the liaisons. I know you provided a written report, but I will also ask at this time if anybody would like to give a quick oral report to the Academic Senate body. So Pam Gunther.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I don't believe there's much outside of what's in there. I think maybe the thing that might affect the most people is data collection with respect to tutoring, and that process is being developed and should be ready to go by the 5th week of this semester. Also, one of the things we are grappling with is how do we collect data on when tutors are helping students asynchronously. And there's kind of 2 pieces to that. One of them is how do you record that time on a time card? That's one thing. And then the separate thing is how do you record that data? And that's 2-pronged. One in a way that would help us with apportionment, and the other in a way that helps us with our own internal data collection for making decisions. So that's coming up, and I think the rest is in the report.
Oops, I was muted. Great, thank you for that, Pam. Next is Ruth.
I have a few things, but I'll try to keep it brief. Number one, Dr. Goswami announced that Noel Gomez was appointed as interim EOPS director, which is awesome. And he also reported about the budget deficit, that it had gone from about 5.4 million to about 2.4 because of savings from fewer class offerings, like $3 million savings. However, I looked at the board, the adopted budget that they're supposed to see tomorrow, and it shows a deficit of 4.9 million. So I am unsure as to the state of the deficit. I have to go by what's being reported to the board. So watch the board meeting. That's all I have to say. Third, Skylar presented, she gave a public comment and suggested to CPC the creation of a campus climate advisory board in response to the EDI survey. And in her comment, she suggested 2 things. One, that in addition to creating this advisory board, that there be monthly town hall meetings held, and then also a website created to post and communicate what's been done about the survey and the campus climate, really, what's planned, and also that allows for feedback. For the most part, there was support on everything she said. Not that there was anyone not supporting it, but a few people did speak up and strongly suggested to me, especially to to Dr. Goswami, that we need him to back this up, right? So that we do need him to be on board with this, and not just, you know, something he signs off on, but instead someone who is actually advocating for it and leading the charge as well. And then lastly, CPC approved the abbreviated program review. That's it.
Which is an information item today. Thanks for that, Ruth. Anything from CAC or not at this time?
Nothing major. They had training and did the usual. And for the most part, most DE, emergency DE addendums have been approved.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Robin?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything that I need to do orally. It's all in the report. And only one of my committees had met by that time, so.
Great. Thank you. Michelle?
Nothing to report, no meetings, and I didn't get the minutes from the facilities and safety until after the report was due, so I'll do that next time around.
That would be great. Thanks, Michelle. Oh, Patricia, your hand is raised.
I know the answer to this, but I want it on the record anyway. Under the SCA, we have written that Paloma is not going to be co-chair, and I'm thinking that we want to say that she is now going to be co-chair along with Lori Vasquez.
Oh, did I put is not? Okay, that's my most.
And I thought, oh shit, and then I realized it was a typo.
That is my most frequent typo, not and now. Damn it.
Let's just clarify that Paloma and Lori will be the co-chairs of the SCA committee. Thank you.
Thanks, I'll correct that.
Thank you for that. And I didn't receive a written report from the FA, Cornelia or Ellen, as representatives of the FA that happen to be senators. Is there anything at this time either of you would like to share out with the Senate briefly?
I'll be happy to report. Sorry that there was no written report. The FAA had their first fall meeting on Saturday morning. We had to postpone it by a day. Major issue at the moment, or maybe major matter, you all have received emails from Jamie Campbell. Our annual election is going on. We did postpone it from last May because of COVID-19. Deadline for candidate statements tomorrow night at 6 p.m. The polls will open on Monday. We'll stay open on Monday the 14th, and then we'll stay open for 1 week. And once we have the new board in place, then we will also select a new academic senate liaison, and then there will be a designated person to report. The only other item is that we are currently, again, still in negotiations on the COVID-19 related summer work with the district. And it appears that the district team is taking the current status, the current proposal to the Board of Trustees to discuss it with them tomorrow afternoon. Ellen, if you have anything additionally to report, that were my two ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so.
Thanks, Ellen. Thanks, Cornelia. Pamela, last we spoke, you said you might not provide an oral report, but I wanted to ask if that has changed, and if so.
That's not changed. I'm yielding my time back to the group.
Great, thanks for that. All right, item 6.4. So this is the new agenda item. Not this particular specific item, but this is the new agenda topic that we'll see each Senate meeting. The request to agendize items at future meetings. So if you remember, the first time I introduced this to the Academic Senate and the public was at our July 15th meeting. And by including this item on our agendas each meeting we have, it's my attempt at providing transparency and inclusion to the voices that bring things to the Senate, specifically Senate leadership, whether that be the president or the steering committee, that we considered but not necessarily agendized, and are bringing it forward as information items so that everybody is aware and that people can review it. And if the Senate or a senator would like to make a motion to include one of the items for today's meeting, there's only one item that was requested, but if anybody wanted to include it, then we would vote on it as a body rather than having it be a unilateral decision by a few. So the request is there. This is actually the second time we have received this request. And it is, it's been posted on the agenda, so hopefully you reviewed it. Essentially, long story short, it's a request for the Senate to initiate a conflict of interest policy at the college. Patricia. You're muted. You're muted.
That was all my disclaimer about this is a new process, so I'm feeling my way through it. You know, if we did choose to agendize this, I think a path forward would be to ask, as an initial step, to ask our Academic Policies Committee to do a vetting of other community colleges to see if they have policies like this. I was looking at the UCSB website on a completely different subject. They do have conflict of interest policies, but their faculty looks very different than our faculty in terms of research. So I think it's worthwhile pursuing. And if I were going to ask that it be included on the agenda, I can tell you right now, probably our first step would be to do some preliminary research whether other community colleges do this, and if so, would there be models that we could follow? So I don't know if I want to put this, Ray, help me here. Am I saying that I'm moving that we put this on the agenda for further discussion and possible referral to our academic policies? So moved.
Yes, thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second, yeah.
Okay, great. So we'll need 2/3 agreement with it.
Who seconded?
Oh, I'm sorry, Robin Goodnow.
Thank you.
Okay, so we need to do roll call voting. And to do that, I'm going to bring up our Senate membership from our agenda. So remember, roll call voting is because we are meeting virtually in the age of COVID, and the Brown Act calls for that. Okay, so Patricia made the motion and Robin Goodnose seconded. Patricia, can I have your vote?
Yay.
Cornelia?
So yay.
Counselor Jen?
Sorry, I was reading. Yay, yes.
Ellen Carey?
Yay.
Jennifer Baxton?
Yay.
Pamela Shaw?
Yay.
Thank you. And by the way, I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear for those that aren't familiar with Senate processes. Yay, no, or abstention, or abstain.
You can also say yes.
Yes. Thank you. Michelle Gottwald?
Abstention.
Abstention. I don't believe Devana is with us today. Is that correct? Oh, she's here? Devana's
Devana's
here.
here.
Okay, sorry. Nobody else got that fanfare. Devana?
Yay.
Yay. Pam?
Yes.
Kathy O'Connor?
Yes.
Robin?
Yay. And yay, Devana's here. And baby.
Jennifer?
Yay.
Dr.
Yay.
Beck, thank you. Robbie?
Yay.
Ruth?
Yay.
Tara?
Yay.
Russell? Russell, he was here. Russell Granger?
Yeah, I'm here. I said yes.
Oh, thanks, Russell. Trisha?
Yes.
And Anna?
Abstention.
Abstention. Okay, that's everyone. So tally the votes in my head. Seems as though the motion passed, and it sounds like that we will bring this back to steering. And it's from Patricia's motion, it sounded like, or maybe it wasn't part of the official motion, but it seemed like that AP might be a great spot for this to land. So this will be now work with the Senate. One more thing on this, just because we're all living with it and learning with it, and I kind of made it up and we're still trying to figure it all out and how it works. Dr. Olguin, who provided me with the current request, provided it in a very formal way. He sent it to me in a memo format. And while I truly appreciate that, and it was really nice, and he identified himself, I also want to point out that faculty members can bring me forward items, and they don't necessarily need it to be so formal or in this way at all. And if you look at the previous requests, the people who requested items weren't necessarily named and things like that. So I just wanted to put that out there. And again, we're feeling this process out to see if it serves us really well, and I hope that it does. So now we'll move on to our consent agenda. And so again, since we have substitutes and new people to the Senate, I just want to mention one thing about the consent item agenda so that we're all familiar with the process. We approve the consent items as a whole. And so if there is an item on our consent agenda that you feel needs to be discussed more, or you have anything that goes beyond what could be considered a clarifying question, that we pull the item from our consent, we place it at the bottom of the agenda as a discussion item to revisit later in the meeting, and then we approve the consent item with the remaining items, if there are remaining items. So I just wanted to clarify that process so that you understood what we're doing with the consent agenda. So to briefly provide background on the consent agenda for today's meeting, There are Senate appointments to several different college-wide committees. And so the call went out for these different positions. It went out to all faculty. And so members came back and said what they wanted. And so this is where we landed with those appointments. So Dave Saunders is replacing Doug Folsom on the SEM committee. Doug had to step down. We have 2 at-large faculty for the Institutional Effectiveness Committee, as well as a faculty co-chair that I'm really excited to see step up into this leadership role, because she was an integral part of faculty membership last year, Jenny Erica Barco, as well as BPAP. So our 2 at-large faculty there, Patricia and Chris Brown, and then our District Technology Committee, and the membership is listed there as well. So that is our Senate appointed positions for those different committees. Item 7.3 is an exciting item. It's kind of rare that we see this. Our colleague Nico has done a lot of work to revise the minimum qualifications for his discipline, film and media studies at the state level. This is actually the second time the Senate has seen these minimum qualification revisions, because Nico brought them to the Senate previously. They went to the State Academic Senate for vetting, and he received a lot of feedback. And so he came back to SBCC, has done a lot of work, and changed the proposal. And it's here in front of us again, so that we could potentially approve it and send it back to the State Academic Senate, so that hopefully his minimum qualification revisions come to fruition. So that's item 7.3. And lastly, from our mini retreat work from this summer, at our last meeting, our guidelines were still kind of in a rough place, or a drafty place, however you want to think about it. And so a couple of us took those guidelines away from the meeting, continued to edit them, continued to update them, and try and get what the bulk of the conversation of all of us were, and where we all kind of wanted our community guidelines to be. And so we're bringing it back now as a final draft and as a consent item. The thing I'd like to say about this is, first, it doesn't have to stay on as a consent item. As I said, any item on our consent agenda can be pulled for further discussion. But what I'd like to say specifically about our community guidelines is, these can be, or not can be, these will be something that we live with. And so if we were to pass them today and live with them and reference them over the next couple of meetings, and something isn't working for us, or we're not living them out the way we thought we would, and we needed to wordsmith them and update them more, that is something that not only could happen, but should happen, right? So it's not that these are the community guidelines forevermore. It's that we're approving them to officially adopt them today, if that's the route we take, and then we can come back to them when we need as a community to say these aren't working and we need to update them further. So with that, again, I can take a couple quick clarifying questions. I see Jen, your hand is up. Counselor Jen?
I do have a couple, yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
I do have some clarifying questions, so I don't know, I know you mentioned that we would have to pull it, but I don't know if that's,
so if you don't,
I don't know how that works, I apologize.
it's okay. If anyone feels as though an item needs further discussion and consideration by the Senate, you would just request that the item gets pulled. If you're just asking about...
Okay, so I just have...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I just have clarifying questions for it. So, so I'm curious, just because it came up in our division meeting, will these guidelines be passed into other academic senate or
Madam President,
meetings? I don't even know what to call that.
Hold on 1 second, Jen. Patricia,
if we're going to discuss this or questions, it needs to be pulled off the consent calendar.
Okay.
So that's not a clarifying question. Patricia, that's not a clarifying question.
I think if we're going to discuss it, it needs to come off of consent. If there are questions and answers about it,
Okay.
I mean, that's up, if we can let it proceed. But typically the consent calendar is just up or down. If there's discussion, it gets pulled off and we discuss it separately.
Okay. So should we pull, so then I'm thinking we should pull the guidelines then. Yeah? Anna's raised.
I have questions, so
Okay, then we'll pull it. Robbie?
Well, two things. One is that sounded to me like a clarifying question. Like, is X going to happen? We could just say yes or no. And the other thing, and what I was going to start out with asking was whether or not this is going to be live forever in our consent items section along with the, not consent items, call to order section with the land acknowledgement and all that.
Yes. And to answer Jen's question, the answer was no. This is for our community, which is the Academic Senate. I've received several requests from other committees around campus to look at ours and adopt ours, but I've said every single time that these are the Academic Senate guidelines and nothing more.
so there's no expectations of any of these committees on campus to have something like this.
No, they're community guidelines and they're our community guidelines. I don't feel comfortable telling another community or another committee what they should be doing. If I'm part of it, sure, but not as Academic Senate president.
Okay.
So if you have further questions, let's pull that item. Jennifer, do you want me to pull it, or was that it?
I just wanted to know any expectations of it. You know, coming from the Academic Senate, I feel like people are looking at how we're running our meetings, and if there are other committees that are offshoots of the Senate, are they going to be looking at it and what we're doing? So that's just wanted the expectation and have that conversation. When I go into meetings as the Senate representative, I have those answers. So I apologize if it's going to take time, but
We'll pull it. Pulled. So pulled. Item 7.4 will be at the bottom of our discussion. Robbie?
Oh, I just wanted to apologize if it sounded like I was squashing conversation, but no, I guess that's moot.
And I want to apologize as well if my parliamentary interruption. It's just a point of procedure. It's really meant so that we can have a full discussion if we feel that it's deemed. Jen, I didn't mean to say naughty girl. I just meant, you know, procedurally, let's separate it and talk about it separately.
Oh, no problem. I'm still learning all of it, so this is great.
All right, great. So item 7.4 has been pulled from our consent agenda. So at this time, we have two remaining items: the Senate appointed positions to different campus-wide committees, as well as the Film and Media Studies minimum quals revision. Oh. Do I hear a motion to approve our consent agenda? Robbie?
I move
Great.
to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Pam Gunther?
I second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. I will go back to the top and look at our members and go through each person. Please get ready as we go through the list. Parliamentarian and past president Patricia Stark. She gave me a thumbs up.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Cornelia?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Pamela?
Yes.
Shaw? Thank you. Michelle?
Yes.
Devana?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Russell? There he is. Trisha?
Yes.
And Anna?
Yes.
Excellent. I don't know, guys. I kind of like roll call. It was pretty controversial when we brought it up. I'm kind of digging it. Okay. Anyways, sorry. So with that, our consent agenda has been approved. Excellent. Information items. Over the summer in August, Darren Gerard, our chair of Sabbatical Leave Committee, sent out an email to the full-time faculty body calling for proposals for sabbatical leave. In his email, there was a typo. It said Monday, September 28th, 2019. Of course, you can't submit it last year. It was a typo. It was for 2020. So please, if you are interested, or perhaps if faculty and if full-time faculty in your division may have missed that, please make sure that they're aware that by the end of September, they are submitting their sabbatical leave proposals to the committee. Another information item, an email went out from basically 3 people, Dean Paloma Arnold, myself, and Sergio Lagunas. The email went out because of some, let's say, like misunderstanding, not misunderstandings, but like perhaps some items aren't being reported as required to the bookstore. And in normal times when there's required items for a class, let's say a calculator for a science class or a 3-ring binder for any class, or required items not thought of as like traditional textbooks. Typically students that have book grants and promise program can go in and physically show the bookstore, hey, see how my teacher's listing this as required on the class syllabus, and it's taken care of really quickly, and their grants cover that. With our shift to online, what we were finding was students were requesting so-called required items. Their teachers were letting them know that they were required, but then because the syllabi are all online or it's not easily accessible, students were getting their materials. So whether we're living in COVID and online or not, the bookstore would find it incredibly helpful to have all instructors, regardless of anything else, to list all required items, calculators, 3-ring binders, what have you, during their bookstore orders. So that's the gist of this email. And if you're not doing that, you are basically putting our our students that need book grants the most, and our different programs the most, at a disadvantage, because then the grants can't be covered those things. So that's what the email is. I'm taking the time at Senate to say it again, because we felt very strongly that this is one of those things that needs to be shared out several different times in several different ways. So if you have further questions on that, please direct them to me or Dean Paloma Arnold, and we can walk you through that process. Our next information item, these are Senate appointments that happened over the summer when we weren't having regular meetings, where we would have a consent agenda and things like that. So the positions that were appointed over the summer was the OER liaison to the ASCCC. So Corey Bott, the librarian, will be working with all of us trying to improve the OER materials for campus, for your classes. And then also that resolution 18 that the board passed over the summertime, they were looking for faculty members to help look at their board policies. And so the 2 Senate appointments for working with the board on board policy items with an anti-racist and equity lens are Dr. Melissa Menendez and Elizabeth Rodriguez from Culinary Hospitality. So those appointments happened already, which is why they're informational and not on the consent agenda item. Ruth mentioned this in her report. There is an abbreviated program review process happening this year. PEC did a lot of work last year, co-chaired by Patricia Stark and Dean Corolla Smith, and made several recommendations to CPC in the spring about basically overhauling our program review process. After hearing those recommendations, CPC felt strongly about the need for overhauling the process, and we decided that this year was the year to do it because we are at the top of a new cycle. So Previously, those of you that thought that you were going to give your full program review this year, and everyone really, the only thing that we're doing for the abbreviated program review is doing essentially a resource request. So if you have resource requests, you're putting them in and you're linking them to our strategic directions, your goals for your department. And nothing else, so that PEC can do the heavy lift this year for overhauling our program review process. I don't know how that's going to look when it comes out because we haven't talked about that product yet, but hopefully our program review process is much more in line with equity initiatives and vision for success and all of those things. To give you all information, what's the timeline now for the new abbreviated program review process? Because typically we're learning about program review opening in early August. James Zavas is working on the form right now. Different people are vetting it and looking at it and giving feedback, and we hope to get that out within the next week or so that departments and programs can start that process. Lastly, Dr. Goswami sent an all-campus email about this, but because because of our own 10+1, I wanted to bring it forward as an agenda item, as an information item at the very least. There were new Title IX regulations that passed, and we were legally required to have some of the language adopted. And so these BPs and APs are our interim procedures and policies, and BPAP is looking at them currently. So these are the exact same documents that Dr. Goswami sent out previously, and they're here for your review, but BPAP is also working on them to make sure that, yes, we adhere to the law and the regulation and the deadline to get them in, but that we're also putting them through our own shared governance process. So with that, I just talked a whole bunch. Does anybody have clarifying questions on any of the information items I just provided?
Rayanne, it's
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Who's going to be reviewing besides BPAP? Which committee or group is going to be reviewing the sexual assault policies and procedures?
Well, the BPAP, so the shared governance process for all of our AP and BPs is quite intense. So initially BPAP looks at them. Linda Dozier, our Title IX officer, has already worked on them as well as our VP of HR. BPAP is looking at them now. Once we get them to a certain place, they're going to be shared out to all governance groups for feedback and looking at it, and then it goes back to BPAP, and then also it can, from there it goes to the superintendent president. Each of the different sections of our AP, or chapters, not sections, have chapter leads and things like that. And so the chapter lead also looks at it. But I think I've already covered that because these are the 3000s and they specifically deal with Title IX. And so they kind of start and end in some ways with Linda, even though there's this big long process. Tricia, you want to add to that or change something I said?
No, that was a really, can you guys hear me? I've got my little thing on. Can you hear me? I want to add a tiny bit, and that is these first showed up before the BPAP members, myself, Chris, and Ray are on BPAP. Linda Dozier, who is our Title IX investigator, told her there were 2,100 pages of regs that she had to look through after the mid-June until now. The docs that are coming before us, Kathy and others, are extensive. They're confusing, they're extensive, and BPAP just got its first crack at them. So I guess what I want to say is this is something we're going to have to be paying a lot of attention to. And as of now, I think we're all still really confused about exactly what impact this is going to have. So on BPAP, I think we're going to really be trying to discern amidst all of this changing documentation where the impact's going to be and try to really bring that forward. But it's going to be a lot. And if y'all have suggestions about who particularly y'all would want to take a look at this, let us know, because we're just starting that conversation.
So my question is, I have taken a look at them, and since I teach a lot of this stuff, I'm very interested. I'm also interested because we do have some existing policies and procedures on our campus, and I'm wondering how they conflict or what these new ones would replace.
and how the language might change due to the federal government's change and how they have interpreted sexual assault on college campuses.
So we have a saying in journalism, the story can be approached from the before and the after. That's exactly the approach I've been taking on BPAP, trying to figure out exactly what you're saying. So Kathy, yes, that we don't have answers to that. We just had the very first conversation on it. But
And I think it's always important to highlight, and I think this is obvious, but I think it's always important to say that federal, state, and local law are always going to supersede our local policies and procedures, right? So that's another piece.
That's very true. I'm just concerned because, like I said, we do have some existing policies and procedures, and it would be interesting to see the comparison of what has changed. Because as you all know, with this with the administration that came in, these policies did change on college campuses. So it would just be interesting to know how the changes will affect us. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other clarifying questions for any of the information items at this time? Okay, I'm not seeing any more hand raised, so we shall move on. Item 9.1, the draft of our distance education plan. We first saw this plan at our last meeting, at our last academic year meeting in May. I can't remember the date, early May, that's all I remember. And in my president's report in July, this did not come back as an agenda item, but in my president's report in July, I requested senators to share this draft out with their divisions so that their faculty could review it and ask questions. It's my understanding that questions at those times came to Kathy, came to Lori, and or the administrative co-chair of COI, Dean Alan Price, who's with us today to answer any questions that we have. So with that, I will, this is a discussion item, although there is a recommendation to move it forward to action for approval. So with that, I will open this item up for discussion. If anybody would like to say anything. Ruth?
I think, I don't even know where to start, that the plan is great for when it was written, but I already think it's outdated. And I also think that, I mean, I certainly think we need to pass it, but we also need to have a discussion about the Committee on Online Instruction and what their role is, and you know, to have them, charge them with taking care, addressing a few things that we need to address that we've known have surfaced because of all of us going online, for example, office hours and other things that may come up. And as far as I know, I do not believe COI has been super active lately. So we need to kind of give it a jolt and activate it.
And in response to that, Ruth, I'd like to share out with the Senate that steering discussed last week to bring COI back under Senate. COI is currently not a Senate committee. It is a campus-wide committee that reports to the EVP. And so we had a discussion about, if we're going to bring it back under the Senate, what does that look like? What can we accomplish? Can we get the jolt that Ruth is looking for, et cetera, et cetera. Patricia. Muted.
I'm going to have a comment and then I'm going to move that we move this to action for approval today. So the distance ed plan references the APs that spell out in great specificity what type of training we need to get in order to be certified to teach online. And by the way, I'm just adding on to what Ruth said. So I think a really material question that's in many faculty's minds right now is, will the emergency training we got over the late spring or in the summer, will this satisfy what's in the AP in terms of training? That's an open question right now. Whether COI answers it, whether we bring it to the Senate, I don't know how it's going to move forward, but I think we should approve the distance ed plan, but I think we ought to ask that both the COI question and the question about distance ed training be agendized soon, so we can decide how we want to proceed with those two matters. So even though the training is referenced in the DE, it's summarized and referenced, I think we're going to need to update that sooner. So typically this plan is good for, I think it's 3 years, but I'd like to actually bring it back sooner. So having said all of that, I move that we move the draft distance ed plan to action. And for that, we're going to need a 2/3 vote.
I'll
I second that motion.
I think that was Ruth. Ruth, are you seconding?
Yes.
No, it was,
I-
no, it was Kathy.
Okay, Kathy,
well,
too.
I
Kathy
second.
could take it.
Either one. I didn't hear you, Ruth. Sorry.
It's
Okay.
Kathy's.
So Patricia moved, Kathy O'Connor seconded. I guess that opens up for discussion on the motion. Is that correct, Patricia?
Mhm. And the motion, folks, is just to move it to action so we can vote on whether we want to approve it.
Okay, Pam, you had your hand up?
It's the first time I'm doing this. Is it possible to make a friendly amendment that we move it to vote, but that we add the condition that we edit it within the year? So not wait for 3 years.
No, it's
No.
two separate motions, Pam.
So I'd have to vote no and then motion the other thing.
Well, the friendly amendment has to be done by the person who gave the amendment, right? So
Okay.
Patricia could do, if she were agreeable, Patricia could do the friendly amendment. Isn't that right, Patricia?
Yes, we could do it that way, or we could move the topic to action, and then when we make the motion to approve, we can add the conditions on then. I think that's the cleaner way to do it, Pam.
So
I
I
like
should do what right now?
You should smile, hang out, and turn your hand raising thing off. Jen?
My question is, part of when Patricia was talking about moving this, she also discussed what was the original issue of having it possibly moved from a campus-wide committee to a Senate committee. Is that part of the approval that will be saying yea or nay on, or is that something different?
The motion at the table is to move this item to action and nothing more. So we can talk about that further when it's an action item. Okay, so the current motion on the table, unless there's more discussion, is to move this item to action. So with that, we're going to do our roll call vote. Starting at the top, Patricia?
Yes.
Yes. So just everyone again, yes, no, or abstain. So Patricia's vote was a yes. Cornelia?
Yes.
Jennifer Hamilton?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yes.
Pamela?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ivana?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Patricia?
Abstain. This seems like it doesn't really apply much to non-credit.
Okay. And Anna?
Yes.
Great. Thank you for that. So this item has been moved to action. Patricia, we now deal with it in action, right? It's not at the bottom of our agenda, right?
Correct.
Okay. So now this distance education plan is now open for action. So I believe what we want to do is not discuss it. Patricia, help me. I'm talking out loud here. So not discuss it. We need a motion, a second, and then we can discuss it. Is that correct?
Yes. And at this time, I would like to move that we approve the 2019 to 2022 distance ed plan. However, I would also like to include in the motion that 2 particular areas be revisited before the end of the calendar year, so we can discuss this. One is the formation and the authority of the Committee on Online Instruction, COI. And the second is that we clarify whether the emergency training that we did in light of COVID would satisfy, and I am searching desperately for the number, AP 4105, which spells out what is distance ed training requirements for our college. Chris, did you get all of that?
That is, you want clarification on whether the formation and on the formation and authority of COI.
Correct.
And one clarification whether the emergency online training provided over the summer will suffice.
The late spring and early and summer, yeah.
Okay.
Will satisfy the required training under 4105. Right now, it would not.
I'll second that.
We have a motion. We have a second. Now is the time for discussion on this current motion.
Was that Robbie seconding?
Yes, it was, Chris.
Thank you.
This is Ruth. For the first part of those 2 additional requirements, clarification may not be the word for COI, maybe the reconstitution or the reassignment, or I don't know. But I don't know if
The
clarification.
authority of the Senate to take back over COI and reestablish as a Senate committee, as a Senate subcommittee.
Question? This
Yeah.
is Kathy. I'm a little confused. I don't disagree that we should have the discussion about COI, but not until we have a better plan of what COI would actually do, what the membership would be. I see those as 2 different issues, the plan versus COI. And I'm afraid if we just combine these issues, it's going to confuse everyone, and we're not going to really have anything clearly defined. We can approve the plan. We can ask that it be updated this year on the issues that Patricia requested. And then later, when you bring the plan about COI to the committee, then we can determine that. But I'm afraid we're conflating 2 issues that really don't belong together at this point.
Thank you for that, Kathy. I actually disagree. I think it's important. It's kind of like one of those chicken and egg conversations, like which do you do first? I think because of some difficulty in finding out who, there hasn't been a faculty co-chair of COI for a couple of years, because there's been some pedagogical concerns that people who moved online had that weren't answered by the work of COI from the last couple of years. It is very important for the Senate to bring this committee back under our purview. And we had this conversation last week with Dr. Ralston, who the committee reports to, and I don't want to speak for her, but Dr. Ralston, if you would like to contribute and say that you felt agreeable to this, that's kind of where these conversations were coming from.
If I were a person who got to vote on the Senate, I might have made a motion that said, assess the effectiveness of COI. And that gives you the space to decide what to do next, right? So it doesn't presuppose the outcome, but you might want to do something to evaluate COI and think about it in this new context that we're in. So I was open to that when I talked with folks at steering. I'm really interested in all the ways that we can support 10+1 in relationship to distance ed. I think the district's job is to make sure that regulatory pieces are really upheld well and that support and technology resources are available for doing that work well. So it seems to me that Senate would need to be really involved in any committee that's having this conversation, whether it's a Senate committee or a district committee. And I also think in front of us are things like making sure that AP 4105 is well upheld by faculty and that our evaluation process corresponds. I think there are a lot of pieces that need to be looked at in the next year or two. So if that's through COI, if that's another committee, something like that, more people need to get together and be able to have the conversation. So I think I would want to assess COI and then determine if COI is working, what it could do to be better, and if that better is go to Senate. So that was a long rambling answer to, yeah, we need to do something.
Thank you for
And
that.
I want to help you do it.
We do have a motion on the table with 2 conditions at this time.
So hard, baby. It's like double barrel.
So I just wanted to clarify. So I mentioned earlier about this seemed like it was more definitely geared towards credit and not, should non-credit be incorporated into that document, or do they have a separate document? If the answer is that yes, non-credit should be addressed in that document, then maybe that could be something that it's looked at as well to see whether the terms and conditions apply to non-credit, or at least a separate section. Because I wasn't quite sure the intent of the document, not the intent, the scope of the document.
So the scope of the document is our distance education plan for our entire college.
Okay.
So if distance education is part of non-credit, then
Could be. It is, I guess.
Not in normal circumstances currently.
There are 2 classes there are 2 non-credit classes, my understanding, that are non-credit, and there might be in the future. So I just wasn't sure whether just go, okay, this is mostly credit, I'm not gonna worry about it, or whether someone needs to look it through with a non-credit lens to see like, well, wait a minute, we don't have FRC training, or we don't use, so I wasn't sure if that was something that someone needed to do, myself or someone else.
Yeah.
So would that be something that needs to be put in there about like in terms of the like reviewing or looking at it again, or?
So in terms of process, we have a motion on the table. This specifically says that we're going to look at the formation of COI and that we're clarifying DE training of AP 4105.
Okay, so that's kind of incorporated in there maybe?
Hey, Tricia, let me talk about the intent of what I wanted to say. And Pamela, thank you for the use of the term assessment. Folks, all I'm saying at this time is that we're going to approve the plan, but there are parts of the plan that are now outdated. And in order for me in good conscience to move forward on a plan that's outdated, I think we need to have a caveat where we bring it forward and we talk about those things that are outdated. I've pointed out 2 of them for purposes of this motion, but Tricia, there's nothing to stop us when we re-agendize these to broaden that.
Great, that answers my question. So it's
Wanted
included
to add non-credit. Pamela, if we wanted to change the language from clarify and establish the authority to assess, we can handle all of that down the road. I just want to get it on the record that these are areas of that need to be updated.
Thank you. That does answer my question.
Good.
Kathy.
Just as a clarification, Rayanne, COI committee has had a faculty co-chair for years. This last year was the 1 year that we didn't have a faculty co-chair. Lori and I sort of acted as faculty co-chairs with Alan, who was a new dean appointed to the committee. The role of this committee has changed over the years. It was a ed programs committee, then it became a Senate committee, and then the Senate realized that they didn't want to have representation from all of the senators, and so then it went back to an ed programs committee. So the committee has basically been dealing with new distance ed modalities, new techniques. We've had presentations from people. David Wong did a lot of work, and then we took on the work of the plan, which is very outdated. The plan really does need to be approved to meet accreditation standards. And again, like Patricia said, we can go back and you can decide what committee you want to look at it. ITC looked at it before it came to the Senate. So the committee and the plan are sort of two different things. Our committee met until March when we went into the COVID deal, and then we didn't meet anymore except to go ahead and finalize this plan. The committee's been very active. It's been a fun committee. It has not been a Senate committee. It can be a Senate committee. So, but I do think the plan and the committee issues are probably different. I don't care if you have, I'll approve it just to get the plan approved because I think we need a plan. But I don't want the Senate to think the committee had not been active, the committee was not playing a role. Its role was not to do the kinds of things that have been mentioned here. So that role can change.
So Ellen, go ahead.
I just wanted to offer maybe a somewhat different perspective than Kathy's. I've been on COI for my whole time at SBCC, so 9 years. And I did notice a real shift the year before last, or maybe even the year before that. Just it seemed like we started floundering with leadership a little bit then. And last year, especially, though we were technically still meeting, many of those meetings got canceled. So it did seem much less active last year, and I would definitely support looking at what COI's role should be and bringing it under Senate again, especially given the current circumstances and how the current circumstances might change our approach to distance education going forward. I will say, Kathy, I agree I agree it's fun, and I agree as far as a lot of the stuff we've done has been sharing pedagogical approaches, sharing, learning about different technologies and sharing that. And I think it's been very helpful for the people on the committee who do distance education, but I think we need to do more in terms of connecting other faculty with that, especially now that we're all teaching online.
Thank you for sharing that, Ellen. I really appreciate that. I do want to point out that, Kathy, this conversation is not an attempt at discrediting anybody's work. There's no doubt in my mind that you and Lori did a lot of work, especially for this DE plan. But I also want to point out what Ellen is saying, and that is a narrative that I heard from several faculty members. It took me literally several weeks to figure out who the last co-chair faculty member was. That was 2 years ago, Patrick O'Brien. Since he has stepped down, there wasn't a faculty co-chair. And I do take umbrage with 2 faculty members stepping into leadership roles when the committee did not necessarily vote on that or consider that. I don't think that that's inclusive. I don't think that that's transparent. And I think that as a community, as a college community, we want to move away from things like that. I think by bringing this back under Senate, and I do think that it's important to do so, we can give it the jolt that Ruth mentioned several minutes ago in her comment. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing the need for addressing distance education policy and concerns. I appreciate the motion on the table. Again, the motion on the table has 2 parts to it, or 3 parts really. Approving this plan. I think there's a lot of support behind that. We'll see at the vote. Looking at the formation of COI to reevaluate it, bringing it back under Senate, hopefully giving the chair of it a TLU, the faculty chair of it a TLU, so that we can entice somebody to do this really good work, and also clarifying our own APs so that we are adhering to our own procedures and policies and making sure that our faculty are supported in their training. So with that, is there any more discussion about the motion on the table? Cornelia.
Oops. I just wanted to, for clarification, get back to what Pam suggested earlier. about the requirement to give a fixed time frame to review this plan?
I'm sorry.
Was
say-
that, I think Pam earlier said she wanted to have like insert a 1-year fixed time period in which we are reviewing that plan. Was that incorporated in this motion, or did we drop that? Sorry if I missed something.
No,
here.
it's okay. Pam did say she wanted that. Patricia did not include that in her motion.
At the time, I actually hadn't made the motion. At the time, we were just talking about whether we were going to move this to action. I will accept the 1 year if we want to keep it at that. I think, Pam, that's what you were talking about, to have to revisit this plan, which, if you'll notice, is set to end at the end of 2022. That we bring it back with in order to include any changes we make in those 2 areas by a year. I think we need to have the person who seconded the motion also agree with this. I honestly don't know. Sorry.
It was Kathy.
Okay. Also, guys, I don't want to beat this to death, but Ray, I do want to point out that whether or not Senate takes over this committee was not included in my intent. It was really just to do an examination of the current structure of the committee, clarify its roles, its authority, who it reports to. So it's kind of implied there, but it wasn't implicit that it would become a Senate committee, just that we would do the research.
So noted. Thank you for that.
Okay.
I think for this motion, it was Robbie who seconded it.
Okay. Robbie, would you be open to that friendly amendment that we set a 1-year time limit on bringing this back?
Yeah, I include that in my second.
Thank you.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Just for clarity, who brings it back within the year? Who's charged with that?
Well, who owns the distance ed plan? Is it COI? Then we request whatever COI looks like, that we revisit the plan with any updates.
Okay.
Okay, there's a motion on the table that has been seconded. Robbie?
One more bit of discussion before we go to voting is that the narrative I've heard, and I can't quote where exactly I heard this from, but the narrative I heard that was that COI received no input from faculty on the DE plan. And I know that that is not true because I forwarded input from somebody in my division to COI. And I got back an email thanking me for the input when all I did was forward it. So I'm not sure that the input was really understood or acted on. But I just wanted to go on record that it is not the case that there was no faculty input into the DE plan.
Thank you for that, Robbie. I'm confused. Can you clarify for me where did that? Did I say that?
Well, that's what I meant when I said I don't know exactly where I heard it. But when I hear people talking about this DE plan and sort of complaining that there was no faculty input, and I know that there was at least some.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't aware of that narrative. I'm not sure where that's coming from. No, what I'm privy to is that comments were given back to Kathy and Lori and Ellen, who did the heavy lift on this work. So I think that there was input there, as is my understanding.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Jenny?
I just had a question about that second point. We're wondering whether the emergency training we did this spring and summer will satisfy. Will it satisfy for spring? Is that our question?
Will it satisfy forever?
Okay, because if we're wondering for spring, wouldn't that mean that we have to have this brought back to us really soon to resolve that question? I mean, that'd have to be like within the next month or two.
Yeah, Jenny, the issue at hand is that the training we received does not fulfill DE. Like if you wanted, after COVID is over and everything goes back to normal, if I wanted to continue to teach my chemistry class online, the question is, have I satisfied the overall training for DE, or did I receive an emergency training as like a Band-Aid?
Okay, great. So it's not a matter of whether this emergency training would suffice for next spring if we're still in a COVID situation. Okay.
No, it's not that. You're good for COVID.
Okay, great.
But
Go ahead, Pamela.
what I think needs to be considered, and probably AP should take a look at this, and then we should talk about how it moves forward. There should probably be an amendment to AP 4105 that allows for, it was 18 hours of training that people did, right? So while it was unusual, all of the effort to make it as rigorous and meaningful as our normal DE certification was applied as a principle. And in fact, we've gone further with the equity training. So at the letter of the law, it doesn't match the exactness of AP 4105, but I think an amendment to this could allow for that training.
And that's part of what I would hope we would
Yes.
work out before. But also, Pamela, I do want to say as a person who was in the training, which was outstanding.
Yes.
Rob said on several occasions that this was emergency in nature and would not satisfy 4105. So
Right.
it's
As
just
it is,
there.
as it is written.
It is an open question right now that I would like to get answered.
You all carry a huge responsibility for 4105.
Yes.
So, right. This is a clear 10+1 work with the district piece. So there's no reason we can't make this work for all of us. So it just at the letter of the law right now.
Right.
Okay, so I'd like to remind us that we have a motion on the table that has been seconded. And if there's not any further discussion, we can vote on this motion. Are we ready to do so? If so, I'll take a look at our list. Patricia Stark,
Yes.
Cornelia,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
Ellen,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
Pamela Shaw,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Devana,
Yes.
Pam,
Yes.
Kathy,
Yes.
Robin,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Ruth,
Yes.
Tara,
Yes.
Russell,
Yes.
Trisha,
Yes.
and Anna.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay. So we shall revisit our discussion items and moving on to item 9.2. We heard about this already at our July 15th meeting, the recommendation to consolidate the FRC committee, Faculty Recognition Committee, and the Sabbatical Leave Committee. So at that time, Patricia Stark brought forward a memo for us to consider for the formation of this new committee or this combined committee, however you want to think about that. So that was one of the documents shared in this discussion item, as well as I brought back the end of the year reports that each of those committees provided, the FRC chair yearly responsibilities that Sheila Wiley provided for this discussion. And lastly is the official proposal to consolidate them, which I did share out to Darren Gerard, the current chair of Sabbatical Leave Committee. Right now, the FRC committee doesn't have leadership, doesn't have structure, doesn't have meetings, et cetera, so there was nobody to share it with on that side of things. And so the proposal in front of us is to consolidate these two committees. So with that background information shared with you all, I will now give you all the floor, should you have discussion points or questions. Robin?
Yeah, so I just wanted to let the Senate know that the Sabbatical Leave Committee met for the first time yesterday, and this item was on the agenda. There was some concern expressed on the part of the Sabbatical Leave Committee, and also just some questions about how the decision was made. I explained, from my knowledge, starting with last year, how the discussion had proceeded. Their questions included, were other committees asked to take on some of these responsibilities? To which Patricia, jump in to this at any point, but my understanding is that no other committees were asked because this was deemed to be a good fit for the sabbatical leave responsibilities. There were a couple of concerns expressed that I just wanted to communicate to the Senate on behalf of the committee. One was that they were concerned that sabbaticals, that in moving the FRC to sabbatical leave, that there was a sort of conflating of sabbaticals and awards, and they wanted to make sure that the Senate is very clear in their communication that sabbaticals are a negotiated right, a hard-earned right of faculty, and that they not be characterized as an award based
Fair
on.
enough.
The other question that they had, I think revolves a little bit around just not being as familiar yet with what the actual duties are of the faculty. I'm forgetting the name of the committee.
Faculty Recognition Committee.
Yes, the recognition. That was the word I was looking for. What they actually do. They were a little confused about the fact that a lot of the list of duties seemed more, they characterized them as clerical, like notifying the public affairs office of award nominations and recipients. And so they asked if PDAC might be a good spot, if the faculty lecture committee might be willing to take on these duties, or if it was something that just the public affairs office would take on, just announcing nominations and things like that. And so I did explain, having been on the faculty recognition committee, that the main faculty work is the soliciting and facilitating of the nominations process and making faculty aware of the availability of awards, and that was more specifically faculty purview. So I didn't get a huge sense that they were rejecting the idea completely, but that they were concerned. And I think communication is probably really important with them. But anyway, I told them that I would take their concerns forward, and so there they are. And they also pointed out that the Stanbeck Stroud Award spelling needs to be checked in the document because it's spelled differently in the document a couple of times, I guess. One final concern they had was for the chair's workload. And they asked if there was any possibility of the current sabbatical leave chair receiving the extra TLU that was freed up by Sheila not chairing a committee. And I did communicate to them that that was not consistent with other faculty chairs of committees and would likely not be considered.
Thanks so much, Robin. I have a couple responses back, but I do see that Patricia has her hand raised, so perhaps she'll take care of a few of them. And Robbie has his hand raised, so he'll probably contribute to the conversation as well. So I'm going to let them speak to this first. Patricia?
Okay, thanks, Ray. So I'm going to just respond directly to those concerns. this recommendation actually came from me in my former role as Academic Senate President, after doing a pretty deep examination of all of our Senate committees. And while I'm very well aware that sabbatical leaves are a negotiated item and faculty awards or something quite similar, the reason that I aligned these two committees together for this recommendation is that their processes were very similar.
And
So
I
that-
communicated that. to
Thank
them,
you.
Definitely.
Okay,
They
so-
just really wanted us to be careful with the language.
Yeah, understood. I do want to point out that PDAC, the Professional Development Advisory Committee, is not a Senate committee. So this would not be appropriate for PDAC. And the Faculty Lecturer Committee was a subset of the Faculty Recognition Committee. So we would basically have to form a whole new committee, which would reproduce the work of the Faculty Recognition Committee. So that would be a non-starter. I do want to point out that the fact that a lot of the work of the Faculty Recognition Committee, that it's clerical, that was actually seen to be a good thing, because this committee will have part-time clerical support. What we would need the reconstituted committee to do is to make the decisions on who actually gets the awards. So the solicitation, the paperwork, communicating with the Office of Communication, that's something I actually started because I wanted to make sure that our faculty who got awards got publicity. It's a phone call to Sally, and so again, that could be clerical in nature as well, but it's not an onerous responsibility. And in terms of the TLU, I just want to clarify that is not part of this recommendation.
Right. So I did communicate every single point that you've made there, and I just wanted to be clear that they gave me their list of concerns and questions, and that I committed as their liaison to communicating them.
Thank you, Robin.
I did communicate what I knew of the process and all of what you've just mentioned.
Robbie, go ahead.
I just wanted to respond to what Robin reported by saying that pointing out that sabbaticals are a negotiated item is maybe not intentionally, but it feels misleading because we're not guaranteed to get them. So it's like what's negotiated is that we get considered for them. And so even though they are a negotiated item, they still feel like a bit of an award, a recognition of hard work. So I just wanted to point that out. That might be part of what Patricia was saying when she said that the processes are the same, because they are. You get considered for a sabbatical in a similar way, even though it is a different thing.
Yeah, and one item that was discussed for possibly adding to the description of the committee was one that I mentioned to you, Ray, that they do rank the proposals, which also suggests what Robbie is saying, that it is based on other factors. They're not, strictly speaking, just a right because we're faculty. So yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Are there any other comments or questions about the proposal at this time? I'm not seeing any hand raised, so I'd like to just offer some procedural points. Patricia, as always, please correct me. This is up for discussion. We can move this item to action to accept the proposal with, let's say, Stanbeck, Stroud corrected language. We could bring this back for another meeting to discuss. Where are people at with that? Robbie?
Is it too soon to just move that we move it to action and vote on it? Nobody's saying no. So I move to move it to action and to vote on it.
Thank you, Robbie. Ellen?
Second.
Motion has been made by Robbie Fisher, seconded by Ellen Carey. Again, this motion is to move it to action. Is there any discussion about moving this item to action?
I just point out procedurally that we will need a 2/3 vote in order to change the agenda and move this to action.
Thank you for that, Patricia. Any other discussion? I'm not seeing any. So at this time, let's complete our roll call vote. And as Patricia mentioned, we need 2/3 vote for it to pass, to move to action. So I'll go through the members again. Patricia Stark.
Yes.
Cornelia.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Ellen.
Yes.
Jenny.
Yes.
Pamela.
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
Devana.
Yes.
Pam.
Yes.
Kathy.
Yes.
Robin.
Yes.
Jennifer, or Jen.
Yes.
Robbie.
Yes.
Ruth.
Yes.
Kara.
Yes.
Russell. Trisha.
Yes.
And Anna.
Yes.
Great. This item has now been moved to action. So we are now in action with this current proposal to combine these two committees. So now that we are in action,
It's okay, we'll find it. I'm confident.
would anybody like to do anything? Robbie.
I'll do something. I move to consolidate these two committees as discussed.
Thank you for that. So there's a motion on the table to make these two committees combine. Cornelia.
Well, Robbie was faster than I am. Can I second the motion with the friendly amendment that we are including the consideration of the sabbatical committee members' concerns as they were communicated by Robin to us?
So you would have to ask Robbie if he's okay with that. He has to be the one.
I always want to consider people's concerns, but don't we do that all the time? It isn't that understood.
Well, I'm just not sure if the concerns were known when the proposal was written. It appears to me maybe not. So maybe we should. This is a little bit of an uneasy feeling I have that there were significant concerns from the current sabbatical leaves committee members, which we should somehow incorporate into our proposal. Yeah.
Patricia, I assume you're going to provide a point of order, or
No, I'm confused. I got to tell you guys, I don't know the first thing about friendly amendments. I'll research it as soon as this meeting's over. What I do want to say is that our president, Ray, shared this proposal early in the summer with the chair of the sabbatical leave committee. At that time, he queried the current members of the committee. The concerns were raised at that time. I think all of the ones that Robin just represented to us, most of them, and that we did consider them in the drafting of this proposal. So I guess it's just the squishiness of your language, Cornelia, I'm a little concerned about. We're going to have some friction here, some tension here. We're asking them to take on extra work. We're aware that there's some concern about that, but we're still asking them to take on extra work. So
yeah, and what I'm hearing
Okay.
from Robbie is he's not agreeable to the friendly amendment. So Cornelia, you have a decision to make. You made it. Would you like to support it by seconding it? If you don't, that's okay. We still have options. Somebody else can second it. We can vote on it, and people can vote how they wish. And if it gets voted down, then we can come forward with another motion. But at this time, I'm recognizing the motion on the table made by Robbie. Would you still like to confirm your second or no? Cornelia.
at this time, I would like to not confirm it. Sorry, I have to think for another 60 seconds. So maybe somebody else.
Totally fine. We have a motion on the table. Would somebody like to second it? Ellen?
I second it.
Thank you, Ellen. Is there further discussion to be had about the motion on the table of considering this item? Robin?
I'll need to communicate back with sabbatical leave, of course, about the results and the discussion. And so my question is, in terms of the concerns about workload and things like that, that's something to be worked out by the committee with their clerical support, correct? There's
Correct.
nothing saying that one person has to do all of a particular responsibility and that some of the functions couldn't be handled by clerical support and those things, right? I think Patricia put her hand up.
So guys, it's important to know that the Senate used to have a 100% full-time administrative assistant to support our committees. We no longer have that position. However, Ray, we have been given part-time administrative assistants, and it really is up to us to decide how we want to deploy that. And so, yes, the clerical, that's an organizational thing we should work on together. What should be done by a clerical, by an administrative assistant? What's the higher level work that needs to be done only by faculty? That can be sorted out by the committee. Does that answer your question, Robin?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm assuming that as the committee, if this moves forward, begins to consider the workload, that they may have suggestions that they could also choose to deal with in the way that seems best to them or bring back to the Senate as well, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So with that, is there any further discussion? If not, we can begin our vote on this item. Okay, starting at the top again, roll call. Yes, no, or abstaining? Patricia?
Yes.
Cornelia?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes. Wait.
Jenny? Jenny?
Yes.
Ellen, just to be clear, you wanted a vote of yes, correct?
Yes, sorry.
Pamela?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Ivana?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Tara?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Trisha?
Yes.
And Anna.
Yes.
So with that, the motion passes. We'll communicate out to sabbatical leave. Robin will be working as interim liaison as we navigate this combination of the committee. Our bylaws will be updated as such, and we will continue to work with the committee to make sure that the new roles are understood, carried out, and further concerns are communicated back to the Senate for discussion as well. Okay, so with that, we'll move on to our next item, which is 9.3 Accreditation Standard for Improvement Plan. Patricia, I'd like you to introduce this.
Okay.
Since this is your body of work.
Okay, folks, the context is that the college is currently engaged in writing an institutional self-study. That's part of our 7-year accreditation cycle. The institutional self-study, we call it an ICER because of course we have to have an acronym for everything, needs to be completed by the end of this calendar year. And it's a very complex process. It's a heavy lift. It's a lot of moving parts. So what's before you today is standard 4 Accreditation Standard 4 is governance and leadership. It is an area where we have had quite a lot of engagement, let us say, in the conversation about how well our college is doing in that in the last couple of years. And so what happened is a team of faculty, staff, and administrators got together, we looked at Standard 4, we responded to 7 different substandards, but in doing that, we noticed enough gaps. I'm using accreditation language here, enough gaps that we decided to write a separate document, which we're calling an integrated improvement plan. So what is before you today is a heavily, heavily revised version of the Standard 4 Integrated Improvement Plan for Governance and Decision Making. Now, you saw the Senate, our previous Senate, saw an earlier version of this in late April. The reason I'm bringing it back to you today is because the document we now have, and it's still a working draft, let me stress that, is significantly different than the document that we provided to the Senate for feedback back in April. Now, we're also on a shortened timeline now, so I'm presenting it to the Senate as a courtesy because we are a governance and leadership body. But the way that we will do vetting on this is that this draft proposal will go to the College Planning Council next week, along with all the rest of accreditation. We're going to have a webinar on it. We're going to have, Z has prepared a tool asking people to provide feedback on whatever portion of accreditation they want to. So this is kind of a preview. What's different about the plan, let me look at my notes, is the entire document has been edited for brevity and clarity, and 2 large chunks of it were removed from the April version. We had a huge chunk that was definitions about governance versus operational. That's gone. We also had a large chart at the end that summarized just a tapestry of different things that had been done around the question of equity, diversity, and inclusion. That chart is also gone. What has been included is, in response to the feedback senators offered in April, is people pointed out that while there was still, we'll try this and we'll try this, there was no institutional response to the spring 2019 campus climate survey. Ruth alluded earlier that at the College Planning Council last week, Guyer presented, which was such a simple and elegant way of moving forward on this, that is now in summary form in this plan. So again, I have to say it's a working document. Some of the stuff we're actually not haven't finalized yet are in the plan, but those are the major changes. So we can certainly talk about it. I'm very happy to answer questions, but right now the plan that you're looking at is the plan that's going to the College Planning Council next week. And then your 5 senators, your 5 faculty representatives on the College Planning Council will also be conduits for feedback, but there will be a tool, a survey that goes out to everyone, which will provide additional opportunity to feedback. Guys, September is when we need to do this. By October, we're wrapping up.
Thank you for that. With that, Pam?
I just have a clarification question. When you say integrated improvement plan, what was integrated?
Well, if you take a look at the way that most people do, there's another document which you're not looking at, and it's each of the accreditation standards are listed. There's 7 of them within Standard 4, or say substandard. And then you have to provide a response, you have to provide an analysis, and you have to list all the pieces of evidence that support the fact that you are meeting the standard. But when you do that, you find gaps. You say, okay, right, we might be meeting the standard, but there are really areas where we need to do better. That's called a gap. Or there are areas where we're not doing it at all. And typically that's where the improvement plans live, Pam, within that document. We had so many improvement plans within those 7 standards. We pulled them out, integrated them into one document. So the integration means that it pulls from all 7 substandards within Standard 4. Guys, I know this is hard to understand.
I know, I'm not sure I've always paid a lot of attention in the past, but so this says Standard 4A. I'm assuming there's a B. or a C or something else instead of just a standard 4.
You're very astute. Standard 4B is the superintendent president. Standard 4C is the board. I cannot give you those because they have not been submitted to the accreditation team so far.
For what it's worth, the board one is on the board agenda for tomorrow's board meeting.
Right, right. It's their first look at it.
Yeah. Could I help Pam see the things that got integrated? On page 9 of this document, Pam, are the individual pieces that standard 4A seems to need to tighten up and improve upon. And so each of those is kind of an individual response. And then the purpose of the integrated improvement plan is to do it in a fuller setting. We can solve these problems if we do this larger project.
So A is like faculty purview, or what's
the
college?
Decision making and governance.
And B is
superintendent president.
The rules and guidelines and job description of your chief executive officer.
Okay.
And then the standards for the board are in C. And if we were a multi-college district, we'd have rules and structures for a multi-college district, but we're a single college district, so we get a not applicable on that one.
So Pam, what I will tell you is that accreditation steering has created a timeline, and it's embedded in our timeline that 4B and C will be included in the document that's shared college-wide, and we will have an opportunity to provide feedback on that. That's the plan.
Robin?
So I just have a follow-up to Pam's question, or actually Pam's question gave me a question about the process. Is there any integration among A, B, and C? Do they collaborate in any way? Is there any communication about what's being written? Are they going to be could they conceivably be totally different or at cross purposes?
I've shared all of I've shared with Dr. Goswami and Luz, not with the board. I figured that's his responsibility to share with the board. Multiple drafts of this, including the draft that you're looking at today. We have not seen theirs.
Yeah, that was my follow-up, not vice versa.
Right.
Okay. So with that, if there's not further discussion on this item, and there might be, I just wanted to say that as mentioned in our meeting agenda, that Patricia doesn't necessarily need, or Patricia or the Accreditation Steering Committee or the larger body doesn't necessarily need from the Senate at this time any action around this item. It's just being shared out to governance groups, especially us, at this time for our review and questions and answers. So Patricia, should people have follow-up questions on this particular item, to whom should they be directed?
You know, I'm always happy to answer questions. What I do want to say is we are not going to be changing the document before it goes to the College Planning Council. So I would probably encourage you to ask questions about procedure or whatever, but your opportunity to provide feedback will be coming after the webinar when the tool comes out. And by the way, that's mid-September. It's going to be a quick turnaround because the revisions, was not much time to incorporate those revisions. So please do take that survey seriously when it comes out.
Not on my bed. Excellent. So with that, I feel comfortable moving on from this item. We can have more accreditation discussion around our next item. So unless I'm seeing any hand raised or further discussion, I would like to move on to our next item on the agenda, which is item 9.4, the quality focus essay. And Pamela, I'd like to give the floor over to you for this item.
Great, and Patricia can weigh in as well. So part of why I wanted to weigh in on the piece that Pam was asking a question about is, as we worked through the fall and into winter last year, we thought we might do a quality focus essay on our issues about campus climate, voicing governance, decision-making, in response to the campus climate survey and other issues that we had seen. And I reached out to ACCJC to talk to them about this new element, the quality focus essay, and whether or not that would be a good vehicle for us to pick up some of the things we wanted to improve upon. I got pushed back into thinking about the quality focus essay the way the commission really intends it to be, which is something closer to students, more directly associated with student achievement, things that you can see reasonably immediate improvement in student success. And so with that, we came back to the table at Accreditation Steering Committee and worked with Guided Pathways to think about how we could use this effort to make sure some of the elements that we're working on in Guided Pathways could stay on a pretty tight timeline with a lot of institutional attention and support. So we drafted the quality focus essay on the notion that we're really focusing on students, addressing equity gaps and missed opportunities, and working in an integrated fashion to make sure that all the elements, not all the elements of Guided Pathways could be enormous, but 3 really crucial pieces of Guided Pathways work would come through. So this is a document that sets the context for some of what that looks like. And then the focus of it is improving our onboarding process and understanding that is more than the registration of students into the college or the enrollment of students into classes, but really this first learning opportunity for students to succeed and land in opportunities that'll work well for them. It's also working on our program mapping of academic and career pathways, that work that Margaret has been leading, and then working with student services to make sure that our educational technology is really in place. So we currently have an ed planning software. It doesn't serve all of the functions that we need it to do. And so we're looking to, we're actually mid-process of implementing this educational planning software that's an improvement, and it connects back to Starfish. So it's a much better product for us. And then that document will actually have our map programs integrated into that. So students will be able to work more effectively with counselors and really work through the student ed planning, which is a huge part of the 2012 Student Success Act. It gets reiterated in 2017 when we see the emergence of the Student Equity and Achievement Plan. So these are kind of 3 integrated pieces that help map out the student path in, at, and through the college experience. So this is kind of focused on those pieces, and it's set up to have a timeline to make sure that we hit these benchmarks, and it's pretty focused on students. So it's kind of the balancing point of what we were able to do with the Standard 4A improvement plan.
Thank you for that. So similar to our last item, Pamela, do I have it correct that this is not an item that the Senate needs to take action on, and there will be further times?
Right. It becomes part of the larger document. Senate owns pieces of this. In some ways, this has a lot of faculty component parts. So you being familiar with it, feeling like it's a good embrace of work that you've been supporting and learning about is all really important. Feedback on it is totally acceptable early and often. And then it'll be set up in the tool as well for people to weigh in on. And over time, this is the kind of item that should have an annual report back to Senate. It plays a role in the midterm report. So institutions work on their quality focus essay, and at the 3-year mark, we include it in our midterm report to say, yeah, we actually hit the benchmarks that we had planned. These are the things we're working on. Similar to how we'll be working with those improvement plans.
Patricia?
Yeah, we're running short on time, but I hope this is helpful context. Folks, the reason it's important, first off, if you can't read the whole doc, and it's a lot, go to those tables.
Yeah.
And this is, by the way, true. This is true for all docs. Read the executive summary, read the tables. And this is what you need to know. Everything in those tables are things that we as a college are committing to do. And if we're not going to do them and we can't commit, they shouldn't be in the table. And the reason I want to point this out is I'm leaving in May, okay? And a lot of the stuff in that Standard 4 improvement plan, I'm not going to be here. So it's, and I don't mean to make this personal, but I drafted a lot of the plan. It's very important that we as the Senate understand this is what we're committed to doing. And if we don't do it, we're going to get a sanction. Or maybe not a sanction, help me with the word, Pamela. So read through these charts and make sure this is something that we as a college can commit to doing. And those parts that are faculty owned, the Senate will be responsible for making sure they get done. That's really the importance of why we're giving you a preview of these, to give you some extra time to read through this. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And it is true, we are coming up to our 5 o'clock time cutoff for our meeting. So there's a couple of things that we can do with that. We can finish up our discussion on this item and conclude our meeting, not getting to last 2 discussion items. And we can, steering can agendize them at our next meeting. Somebody can make a motion to extend the meeting. There's a couple of different things that we can do here. I certainly don't want to stifle the conversation around this item. Should people have questions that they have and concerns at this time that Senate should think about and discuss. Robbie.
I'd really like to get to those last things and get them done. I move to extend the meeting by 15 minutes with the caveat that only if we don't chit chat and zoom through it.
Coolness. Robbie has made a motion to extend the meeting. Is there a second for that item? Ellen?
I second.
Ellen has seconded. Robbie made the motion. Ellen seconded. I assume there's no discussion around that. Okay, so I'll go to the top with our very efficient roll call. Patricia, voting.
Yes.
Here we go. Cornelia?
No, I have to leave, unfortunately.
Okay, so we got a yes and a no. Jen?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Ben? Jenny?
Yes.
Pamela? Pamela?
Yes.
There we go. Michelle?
Yes.
Savannah?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Robin?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Ruth?
Yes.
Kara?
Yes.
Russell? Is that a yes? I think it was. And who do I have?
Trisha, yes.
Trisha, yes, thank you.
We have 2/3. We have 2/3.
Okay, cool. All right, so the meeting has been extended by 15 minutes. So our new time will now be, our new end time will be 5:15. Pam.
I have a question, but I'm not sure if I can ask it now because it's about one of the tables in Standard 4 that Patricia brought up.
I think
should have asked it during that, maybe.
Yeah, probably, but we'll let it.
Okay.
I'll let it slide.
So there's something in there that says that, that you're planning to have the academic senate, state academic senate, come do a focus study this fall. Is that something that's already been set up, and when is that going to be happening?
Actually, no, that has to be changed because the timeline doesn't work anymore.
Okay.
So we would change that to either we would probably do fall of next year.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, by the way. That's the kind of catches I need you guys to make.
Okay, thanks, Pam.
Any further questions about the QFE before I go to my next meeting?
I think
celebratory joy about the nice tables.
It's beautiful.
People weighed in, people wrote things. Okay, so if you have follow-up questions, feel free to pass them along. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pamela. All righty. So with that, we'll move on to our last 2 agenda items. So we have about 15 minutes left. We're at item 9.5. So let me share my screen so that I can discuss this again. Item 9.5, and then the last item, remember that one of our consent items, which is our own community guidelines, was removed from the consent agenda and placed at the bottom of today's agenda. So if we have time, we'll get to that as well. 9.5, hopefully you read the narrative around this. There's been some discussion about opening up our Senate governance discussions, our Senate meeting to the public, meaning that when we are having our meetings, that, quote, the public, those guests in attendance can contribute to our meeting discussions and called upon when the senators are being called on for additional discussion points and talking points. So with that, this is an important conversation, so I won't take any more time up with any background. I'd like to ask you at the Senate table if you have any questions or comments or discussion at this time around this item. Michelle.
My thought is that although we value feedback, it's going to make our meetings so long. We're not going to be able to get through our agendas. And I think if we can create some other process to really allow individuals to know that they can do public comment. If maybe we need to make that more known. I think it would just open up a huge can of worms in making our meeting. We're not going to be able to get through our agendas. I think there needs to be a different way for other people to participate or to share their views, or you know, I don't know. That's my thought.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. And you know, the question really at hand is not getting through our agenda and our items of interest worth, sorry if you hear Lego City Police in the background, is worth having, you know, inclusion in our meetings. I think you're making several really good points, and I just want to highlight one of them, which is that we are a representative body, and we do have several mechanisms for comments to be made to the Senate, which is via the representatives at the table. I would also like to highlight that my attempt at including that information item of requests for agenda items was another attempt at making sure that voices that aren't elected representatives are being heard and considered by the Senate. Robbie.
You just said two of the things I was going to say, so I just want to voice my support for not doing that. It sounds great in theory, but in practice, I just don't think it will work.
And I think it's important to point out too, I'm probably showing my bias around this item. I think it's important to point out that when we open up the Senate floor, our Senate floor and our meeting for discussions, that means that anyone can contribute. And it wouldn't be appropriate for me or anyone else running the meeting to exclude one voice because I don't like what they're saying, right? So I think it's an important consideration to think about that it would be including every guest that happens to come to our meetings, that they would then be allowed to participate. Ruth.
I think, I mean, this is the point of public comment. And from my understanding, people are allowed to give multiple public comments, right? On like different items on the agenda, right? We've adopted, right? Can someone confirm? Yeah, okay. It just hadn't happened, or at least in a while, I guess. And so I think being clear on that is important, and also, you know, allowing them to, and remember, well, we have to remember to, you know, giving them the space if they want to speak before, you know, even if it's an hour later that we discuss it, that they're welcome to do so as well. The option to either give the public comment early on or when it's actually being addressed as part of the agenda, because otherwise we are going to lose control of the things at hand. And I know that sometimes it's absolutely worth it. And that's where us as senators, we have to step up as well, right? We have to be representative of the folks that, you know, that voted us into these positions.
Thank you for the discussion. I would like to remind us that, and again, this isn't an attempt to rush things along, but actually, maybe it is. It totally is. That if that point has already been made, that it's been made. And so if you have a opposing view, that this is now the time to bring it forward so that we can make a commitment either way on this item. Jenny?
I was just going to add that we also have our community guidelines and norms that we're adopting, and that, you know, people from the outside might not be privy to that or buy into that. And so that just allows for further lack of unity and, you know, smooth sailing for meetings.
Yes, thank you for that. That was a point I hadn't considered. Ellen?
I have a question. So about public comment and by invitation in the first sentence of this item, is that our current practice? Is the invitation something that would be in advance and on the agenda, or do we have, so we don't have the ability to invite someone to comment in the moment? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, it would be like today when we had the DE plan on our agenda. Dean Alan Price and Lori Vasquez were here to answer questions on that item or present something, right? Often we have presenters at the Senate table, and so it would be agendized ahead of time. Robbie?
Something I forgot to say is that with members of the public talking, it puts the president or whoever is in charge of the meeting potentially in a really uncomfortable situation, having to squash that conversation and leading to potential problems, feeling like, well, wait a minute, my viewpoint was squashed, but hers wasn't. It is a can of worms potentially in that way also.
Anna?
This is my first meeting and I'm trying to catch up on all the things. So sorry if it's explicitly written somewhere and I've missed it, but I did try to look through the guidelines for public comment, and I just want some clarity around if a person wants to make a comment based on something on the agenda item, does that all need to be submitted ahead of time, or do we typically call for public comment? Because I didn't hear that throughout this meeting, so I'm just curious about what the practice is with that.
So typically, the way it works with the Brown Act is you call for public comment at the beginning, or it can be requested ahead of time, right? That's why I said nobody had contacted me ahead of time. And the person making the public comment can make it at the time for public comment on anything that's of purview to the Senate, or they can request to make it before the item is considered.
Right, but the only time that someone can request to speak is at the beginning of the meeting.
That is currently how we've been operating, yes.
Okay, well, I would like to share that as a concern. I totally agree that it can't be a free-for-all in terms of just, you know, wide open, anyone can speak at any time, because I get that that would be overwhelming. But I also want to put out there that meeting times, start times, people may be getting out of a meeting, and if we pass the call for public comment, you know, in the first 3 minutes of the meeting, there could be a lot of people that are left out of that space.
Yes.
Sorry. Just putting that out there.
Yes, and that's why the agenda is published 72 hours ahead of time. So at any time before the meeting and the publishing of the agenda, somebody can write in and say, I want to make a public comment. So I'm not trying to argue with you. I'm just saying that they don't have to be there at the beginning. Public comment can be requested anytime up until that point.
Right.
Tara?
Hi, everyone. I read this request as a real hunger for our community to have more voice in particularly matters that Senate is purview to. And I'm wondering if there couldn't be some kind of compromise here. When we talk about public comment, they're timed, right? So they're very short, and you know, the Senate is already kind of thinking ahead at agenda items X, Y, and Z. Could there be a way for Senate to really be thoughtful and devoted like a town hall Senate meeting where people can come and we can have a conversation? It's just an idea. I don't have a solution to this, but I do recognize the need.
Certainly something we can consider as a community. Okay, so unless there's further discussion, I'm wondering if we want to take this one way or another, whether it's recommitting to our current practices or creating new practices by allowing our Senate to be open to public comment and discussion throughout the entirety of the meeting. Robbie.
I know I'm talking a lot. I'm just trying to keep the meeting moving. I wonder if in the same way that we have the land acknowledgement and our guidelines at the beginning of each agenda, I wonder if we couldn't come up with some more inviting language for public comments and pointing out that, yeah, you have to submit your request for that, you know, but like if you're in a meeting and you can't get there until 4:30, you can say, I'll be there at 4:30 and I want to make my comment then, you know, to allow for these possibilities and include it in the agenda each time and report out to our constituents that, you know, we're not making each thing a free-for-all, but we really do value and want public comments.
We could totally do that. That's something that can just be adjusted in the language of our agenda by our steering committee. It's not.
Okay. Well, then I don't know if I need to make a motion, but I propose that we do that and maybe have it ready for our next meeting for everybody to look at and approve.
Oh,
Is that the right way forward? I don't know.
We can do that. Is that your motion?
Yeah. I'll be clear. I move that we revise the public comment language on the agenda to encourage more comments and facilitate easier public participation without changing our overall, this is really long, without changing our overall MO.
Okay.
That's my motion.
I have super mixed feelings about all of this. You know, on the one hand, I think that
excuse me, Pam, Madam President, procedural.
Yep.
Red flag.
Yep.
Two things. One is we have a motion on the floor, so Pam, you got to wait a little while. And the second thing is, I'm afraid this is a discussion item, and we would need to move it to action. Don't shoot the messenger, okay? Before we could actually do something about it.
Okay.
So then should I, Patricia, tell me if this is the right thing to do. Should I revise my motion or remove my motion? Should we take this up at steering next week and deal with it there?
You know, if it's okay, that would be my recommendation because we're completely out of time. I think we're hearing via consensus the direction that the Senate would like us to move in. So we could bring this back as an actual agenda item next week. And in 2 weeks with the amended language. We can work that out procedurally and then go ahead and move it to action then and formalize it. Let me just say one more thing, guys. This is appropriate because my first year as senator, we did take comments from the floor. We basically, I would call on anybody who wanted to talk. And I got a lot of complaints about that. So the next year we did exactly what Ray is doing right now, is we had a consideration of whether or not we would continue to do that. And last year's Senate decided they did not. So this is just something that we have to look at continually and I hope make the process better.
All right, well, I withdraw my motion then.
Okay.
So it sounds like at this time, we will take this back to steering for further discussion and vetting. The time is now 5:15. So we are officially at the time at which we are supposed to end. We do have one more agenda item. So our options are a motion to end the meeting, at which point our guidelines will come back at a future meeting, or a motion to extend the meeting.
Well, I'm the one that wanted to talk about it, so but I'm fine coming up next putting it on the agenda next time, or in 2 weeks. And this is Jennifer, by the way.
Okay, so then I move to end the meeting.
There's a motion on the table to conclude today's Senate meeting at this time. Is there a second?
I second it.
Was that Jen? Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Robbie made the motion, Jen seconded. Any further discussion, please raise your hand in the participants field at this time. No hands raised. So can you unmute yourselves and make your vote known to conclude today's meeting?
Adios.
Yay.
I mean, yes.
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 Thank you all so much for your time and energy and
Yes.
today's discussion. Have a great Wednesday evening.